All right, everyone. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Scuba Santa live with Birch Aquarium at Scripps here in beautiful San Diego, California. My name is Caitlin, and I am here with Delaney. We'll introduce ourselves a little bit more in a moment, but we just want to say thank you to everyone for tuning in this morning. All right. Well, as I said, my name is Caitlin, and we are so excited to welcome you. I work at Birch Aquarium as a science communicator. I work in our communications department. And then we also have Delaney, who has a really cool job at the aquarium.
Hi, everyone. I'm Delaney, and I'm an education coordinator here for the aquarium. So I help with all of our guest public programming and welcoming you through our doors when we are open. And I've done everything from being a naturalist on the whaleboat to teaching kids how to snorkel and teaching in our classrooms and on outreach. So we're so excited to be here. It's the Saturday before really holidays are getting going. They're coming up fast here. They've already been starting. So we're just so excited that all of you are joining us today, and we look forward to talking about science and seeing Scuba Santa today as well.
Yes. And so anyone who tuned in last week will have an idea of what's happening, but we are just waiting for Scuba Santa and Scuba Elf to head into our giant kelp forest this morning, and they are going to help feed some of the many amazing fish we have in this cool exhibit, which has real kelp that mimics the kelp forest that can be found right off our coast in San Diego. So Delaney, while we're waiting for Scuba Santa and Scuba Elf to make it into our exhibit, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about giant kelp and what makes it so special. And wait, before you do, I just want to let everybody know, please ask us your questions in the comments, because as Delaney and I are talking about the giant kelp forest, we want to say happy holidays to you guys and ask us your questions about the kelp forest. But yeah, let's dive in a little more with that kelp. What is that cool algae in there?
Yeah, so maybe some of you have seen this beautiful kelp forest before. Maybe this is a new habitat, a new environment for some of you who aren't here on the West Coast, and you're wondering, what is that beautiful stuff growing underwater? So this is a type of algae. It is called giant kelp, and it grows very strongly off our coast here. So we find it washed up on beaches. You might know it as just general name of seaweed, but this is a really mighty strong algae that can grow up to 200 feet tall,
Whoa.
which is just mind blowing. Imagine how tall this underwater forest can get. And it's really special because it's a fast growing algae. And because of that, it creates this really well developed habitat that's underwater, which then supports this huge ecosystem of the non-living components like the rocks in the sand to the living organisms, like all of these magnificent fish that you can see. And keep an eye out, because you might see some sharks swimming through, and you might see our beautiful large giant black sea bass as well. But algae is really important, and you actually might be more familiar with it than you think, because it's actually used as a really sustainable, healthy ingredient in a lot of the products you can find around your home, like toothpaste or frosting. And it's because it acts as a thickening agent when this kelp's broken down into an ingredient that can be mixed in to a lot of products, which is super cool, because you never know. You're eating algae every day and you don't know it.
Exactly. I hope everybody brushed their teeth this morning, and it's a good thing we have kelp in that toothpaste. These are all great facts about giant kelp, and we get a question a lot of the time at the aquarium: how does the kelp hold onto the seafloor? What is it that makes it stick to the bottom? Does it have roots like a plant on land? We get that question a lot. Delaney, does kelp have roots?
So it is not similar to plants on land in that it's sticking these root-like structures into soil to absorb nutrients or water. It's got something called a hold fast. So it's this root-like structure that branches out and it sticks onto rocks at the sea bottom. So you can see that giant kelp is surrounded by water, which means it's surrounded by nutrients, surrounded by sunlight. You can see the sunlight beaming down here in our kelp forest exhibit at Birch Aquarium. So it has a root-like structure, but it's called a hold fast because it's holding on to rocks to ensure that when those big waves or currents are coming in through the coast, that it's not going to detach and constantly wash up. But that's a really great question because it looks just like a plant, but it's a little bit different
A little
in
different in the
structure.
ocean.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, for anyone who just tuned in, we are waiting for Scuba Santa and Scuba Elf to get into our Giant Kelp Forest exhibit. Delaney was just telling us about this amazing algae, Giant Kelp. And I saw our fish were getting a little excited. I saw that leopard shark swimming around, which makes me think that Scuba Santa is probably just getting ready to get in. So we are using our patience skills as we wait for Scuba Santa. I think right now would be a good time to maybe take a few questions. Everybody can leave their questions in the comments and we'll go ahead and answer some of those while we're
I
getting
see
ready.
somebody.
I see some really cute ones. We have a great question from Danny. Delaney, which fish do you think Santa uses to guide his sleigh? Oh, we got an elf in there.
We
Oh,
have
yeah,
an elf. The elf's hat is falling off.
uh-oh, watch out.
Elves are not the best divers. They're getting used to it, though.
It's very new
very
for
new
these
to them.
elves. Delaney, that was a great question. Delaney, which fish do you think Santa would use to have an underwater sleigh from our kelp forest?
Well, if Santa had to use a fish to guide his sleigh underwater, our beautiful girl is coming right into picture here. I believe he would use our giant black sea bass, and you can see Scuba Santa coming down into the kelp forest.
Scuba Santa.
Saying hello to our
hungry.
beautiful girl. Oh, yes. So speaking of this black sea bass, you can see Scuba Santa right there and his elf waving hello to all of you. You can see Scuba Santa's got a big heaping of food for our animals. So I want you to take a close look to see if our sea bass comes up to take a bite because she gets very hungry and very aggressive when it's feeding time.
Yeah, she gets very hungry. Oh my gosh, hi, Scuba Santa. I don't think Scuba Santa can see us, Delaney, but oh my gosh.
Wow.
Whoa, Scuba Santa's a better diver than we realized.
Yeah.
Getting
I
in
think
there.
the elf's got his head on straight now.
Perfect. There we go. And so Scuba Santa is just getting ready to feed those fish. And we have another great question from Lisa and Lily. They want to know what are our personal favorite kelp forest animals and why? Ooh, that's a great question.
Great question. I'm a little distracted by the dancing of Scuba Santa and Scuba Elf.
You're so fun right now.
Yeah.
Whoa.
The holidays are coming up. Wow.
Whoa. I'm impressed.
So if I had to pick one favorite animal in here, it's got to be the Garibaldi. You can see all of them sprinkled. They kind of look like goldfish at the bottom there. So the Garibaldi is the California marine state fish. And I love this fish because one, it's got a bright orange color, which is one of my favorite colors. But also when they are just tiny babies or fish fries, what we call them, they've got these electric blue spots all over them. And they're just such bright, vibrant colors underwater. And we don't get these vibrant of colors here off of our coast with animals. We tend to find more vibrant colors in animals in more tropical regions. So I would say the Garibaldi is my favorite kelp forest animal. How about you, Caitlin?
My favorite kelp forest animal, I'd have to say, is I really love seeing the leopard sharks when they're swimming through the kelp forest. A lot of people here in San Diego have seen those leopard sharks on La Jolla Shores Beach or on that sandy bottom habitat. But when you see them swimming through the kelp, they look almost more stealthy as they're weaving through all of the kelp. So I think that they look so cool. And we'll point out that leopard shark to you guys. It's skinny and sleek and often swims around in the middle of the exhibit. So we'll be sure to point it out. Oh my goodness, what is Scuba Elf doing back there, Delaney?
That's a great question. So Scuba Elf is helping to clean our 70,000 gallon kelp forest exhibit. So that long hose you can see is a sort of vacuum that is attached up to the surface. And what our Scuba Elf is doing is going around and cleaning up maybe some leftover food from the last time the animals were fed, any small debris maybe from the kelp, or animals go to the bathroom, so Scuba Elf might be cleaning that up as well. So making sure that these animals have a nice clean exhibit. So Scuba Elf is doing some hard work back there.
Oh
and I actually noticed.
Whoa!
Caitlin, maybe you can tell us what Scuba Santa is doing.
Oh, yes. So I got really excited seeing our giant black sea bass come down. So Scuba Santa has a variety of different foods. And I saw somebody asked Lisa over here, Lisa Davis, we got a lot of Lisas this morning, asked, what do the fish eat? So the fish in our giant kelp forest exhibit are actually eating a pretty diverse diet. They like to eat all sorts of different things just like we do. And it's not just having different types of food, it's also having different sizes of food because we all saw that giant black sea bass, she could open her mouth really big. But some of the fish we have in here, like the Garibaldi, are much smaller and their mouths are small. So a lot of the time we have things like mackerel, capelin, those are types of fish, and they might be whole mackerel for our giant black sea bass or chopped up into smaller pieces for some of the smaller fish. Sometimes they have scallops or other types of shellfish. And then also stuff like squid. A lot of our fish love to eat squid. And what's really cool is that all of these different creatures are eating restaurant grade seafood. So a lot of the times it might look like our aquarists are preparing a very fancy lunch for themselves, but really it's lunch for the fishes. So very delicious. Oh, and sometimes you can see there's lots of little dots around Scuba Santa right there. Sometimes we also have krill or very small shrimpies. Wow, that sea bass is cool. Can you tell us a little bit more about our big girl we have in here? Do you know how much she weighs or how big she is?
Yeah, so this special fish has been with us since the aquarium opened in 1992. And sea bass are a part of a huge conservation effort because at times they've dropped to being endangered and threatened. Slowly over time, their population is beginning to recover in the wild. But she serves as an animal ambassador for Birch Aquarium, and these fish can get quite large. They can weigh up to 400 to 500 pounds. And so she's coming in close to 300, 400 pounds. And she's still growing. She's probably a little over halfway through her lifetime, but she's huge. And you can see she really forms that dominance in our exhibit. She sits at the top. She looks over the exhibit. So well, Scuba Santa and Scuba Elf know who's in charge, and so do the animals in this exhibit.
Definitely.
But you can find them in the wild. If any of you are avid scuba divers, they do sometimes come up close into the kelp forest off of La Jolla. And then the Catalina Island, which are part of the chains of Channel Islands off of California's coast, you can find giant sea bass over there as well. So
Well, here she comes.
Oh, there she goes.
She's hungry today. Sometimes she's not too hungry. Delaney, I think you've seen giant sea bass scuba diving, haven't you?
I have. So I got a chance to see them in Catalina, and they really just pop out of nowhere and they can swim away very quickly despite their large, slowing, swimming behavior we're seeing right now. But very fascinating fish.
Totally cool. Andy looks like he has a great question for you. And we introduced this habitat a little bit earlier, but what is this special habitat we're talking about? Where can we find these cool creatures in the ocean?
Yeah, so this is a kelp forest habitat, and it's one of many habitats we have off the California coast. And kelp forest can actually grow in other parts of the world as well, like off of Africa. And it's because it needs certain things in order to thrive. So it seeks cold, nutrient-rich water. And California, you might think, well, we've got nice, sunny California here, but the water's actually quite cold compared to parts of the East Coast. And that's because we get these really large upwelling events where we have these trade winds that blow, which causes the surface water to move out, which might be warm, but it causes really deep cold water to come up to the surface. So it might be kind of in the high 80s, low 90s during the summer. It's a nice hot day out, and then you dip your toes in the water and it's freezing cold. So these cold upwelling events, we know because we've been there. We've been in really cold water in the summer.
Cool.
And because of that, this kelp just thrives here. So cold nutrient water is what this kelp needs to grow. And that's where you're going to find a lot of these different species of fish, from kelp bass to one of my also another favorite is the California sheep's head, those Garibaldi, senoritas. I could go on and on. There's a lot of different types of species you can find in a kelp forest.
Yeah, it's really a diverse habitat with lots of different creatures. And we are lucky that here in San Diego, we're at the southern range of the kelp forest habitat, and that we're lucky to also have areas called marine protected areas. And on land, we have places where we protect the forest to save it for people, or we protect the deserts, maybe in national parks or national monuments. Well, marine protected areas are protected places in the ocean to help keep the animals and the habitats safe so that creatures like our endangered black sea bass have a chance to recover their species. Very, very cool. We had a few more great questions about the kelp. Here we go. Ava wants to know, do the fish eat the kelp? That's a great question.
Yeah, that is a really good question. And the answer is yes. A lot of these fish like to eat the kelp. Some of these fish like to eat some of the food that Caitlin was talking about earlier, that Scuba Santa's feeding them. But kelp doesn't just act as a home for these animals. A lot of the times that kelp acts as food for a lot of those smaller fish species. And also some of the invertebrates, which are a little hard to see right now on our kelp cam, but we've got a lot of invertebrates in this exhibit, like the purple sea urchins or turban snails. And sea urchins are another popular animal you can find in a kelp forest that actually loves to eat kelp. It's its favorite food, and it can eat a lot of kelp all day long. So that's when we go into talking about balancing of an ecosystem and making sure that there's balance in that food web, because yes, animals eat this kelp, but there's animals that depend on the kelp for home and for hiding, and just for the general space of having this beautiful kelp forest.
Definitely.
So good question.
Great question. And we can't keep any sea urchins in this exhibit because they would nom, 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 eat on the kelp. And a lot of the times they live on the rocks near the seafloor. And so they might eat near the holdfast, or where the kelp is holding onto the rocks. And then the kelp will just float away to the top of the exhibit. So we try to keep the sea urchins out of our giant kelp forest exhibit for that. But you can see them in our tide pools. Very cool. We're getting so many questions, you guys, that are really, really great. Thank you for submitting them. We had a few people asking, where did Scuba Elf go? Scuba Elf is in the back with the vacuum, because if you're going to go in and help take a break from doing all of your holiday cheer, they're going to help us clean the exhibit a little bit. And that's actually what Scuba Santa is doing right now, too. You can see those two blue circles are actually suction cups that Scuba Santa is using to hold on to the acrylic on the front of our exhibit, and it's wiping down the front. The top of our exhibit is open to sunlight so that the giant kelp can get plenty of natural light to help it grow and do photosynthesis. And so that means other algae or things that might like the light can also grow. So Scuba Santa is helping us make sure that that front acrylic, it's not glass, it's kind of like a cool plastic, helps stay clean. Delaney, do you remember how thick is that acrylic? It's pretty thick.
Yeah, so that acrylic comes in at about really, really like a foot thick. And you can imagine that we need to have a really thick acrylic in order to hold back that 70,000 gallons of seawater.
Wow.
And it's been withstanding since 1992. So something that our husbandry team has to do is make sure that this exhibit stays clean, and scrubbing that acrylic is one of the main things that we have to do to inspect it year after year. To make sure it's strong and good to go. So thank you. Scuba Santa's so busy with so many other things that he's taking the time to help us out scrubbing that acrylic. So we are really appreciative.
Much appreciated. Looks like we've gotten a few questions about the different sharks in our exhibit. We had a great question from Aram, who wants to know, how long is a leopard shark? We were talking about leopard sharks. They're one of my favorites in this exhibit. So Delaney, how long is the leopard shark? And are there any other sharks in this exhibit?
It's a great question. So leopard sharks can reach about 6 feet in length. And they are sort of known as a benthic species. So benthic means they are bottom feeders. And when you see, hopefully you see a leopard shark swim by, you'll notice they tend to have a flatter underside, which we call that ventral side of their body. And it's one of 3 different species of sharks we have in this exhibit. So the leopard sharks you'll see swimming around, curious about the food. But we also have 2 other species that will come in at a length of about 4 feet. And that's the horn shark, which hence the name's got horns on its back, and the swell shark, which literally swells up like a pufferfish as a defense mechanism. So these are, they are not aggressive species of sharks. They eat small things. They have a mouth about the size of ours. And absolutely, you can find them here in the kelp forest and locally off our coast as well. But
Exactly.
Really great question.
They're very neat species. And sometimes if you're really, really lucky, you might even spot some of those smaller horn sharks or swell sharks in the tide pools. Now's a great time of year to explore local tide pools, as long as you're very careful where you're stepping, because it can be slippery. But sometimes there are also animals that don't even look like animals. So if you guys are local in California and feel like going to explore the tide pools or the rocky coast that gets covered at high tide and is exposed at low tide, you might find some similar animals that we have in the kelp forest in those local tide pools too. Let's see, we had a follow-up question that was a really great one, a follow-up to our sea bass chat. And Courtney and Merrick would really like to know what would eat a sea bass in the wild. Those giant black sea bass are so big, and our girl is not even fully grown. They could grow to be like 700 pounds, huge. But what would eat a sea bass in the wild?
That's a great question. And based off her size, it would have to be a really large predator. We've got local species of larger predatory sharks that live off our coast, like great whites, tend to be the ones that really come out on top. We have smaller species like blue sharks or thresher sharks, makos as well. Makos can grow to be quite large. But one of kind of the approaches that a sea bass takes to protection is they tend to be more solitary. So that allows them to hide a lot easier. And they tend to use this kelp forest as a way to hide and stay closer to shore to avoid those large predators. Caitlin, I don't know if you have anything else to add because, they get huge. So it would take a really large animal in order to eat them.
And so we were talking about earlier that a giant black sea bass, they're endangered because people fished for too many of them. They caught too many way back in the day. And actually in San Diego's waters, people noticed that there were fewer giant black sea bass as early as the 1930s. So we've been taking a lot of them. So humans are probably the #1 giant black sea bass predator as an adult. But I was just thinking, at the aquarium, we were lucky enough to receive 2 baby giant black sea bass it was a groundbreaking work done by researchers and colleagues associated with the Aquarium of the Pacific to breed the giant black sea bass in captivity. We've never had baby ones born like that before. And we were lucky enough to have 2 of those babies come live with us at Birch Aquarium. And they're so cute when they're babies. They have gigantic pectoral fins, or those fins that are on the sides. And they're kind of like puppies that need to grow into their big paws. They have those huge fins. But when they're babies, they're pretty small. And so I think that a lot of predators would go after them when they're juveniles or babies. Yeah. But they have those big fins and they can kind of go, surprise! And they might startle a predator by flashing those big fins to make them look larger than they actually are. So I give the analogy a lot of the time, if I was eating chicken nuggets and then all of a sudden the chicken nugget was way bigger than it was supposed to be, I'd probably go, huh! And drop that chicken nugget and not eat it. And so it's kind of the same thing. A baby giant black sea bass might have its fins folded up. It might be swimming around and hiding. They have really great camouflage or colors to help them hide in the kelp forest habitat. And then if a predator, maybe like a shark or a sea lion, they might love to eat them, comes by, they go, I'm way bigger than I really am, and flash those big fins, which is a great adaptation to help them survive. And that predator might go, whoa, I'm not going to eat you. You're way bigger than I thought. They're cool little fish when they're babies.
They're great.
Cool target fish when they're big. So keep these great questions coming, you guys. Let's see. Oh, we have Nicole and Chloe. Just want to say hi, Scuba Santa from San Diego. Hi. Thanks for watching. We've had people from all over the country tuning in, so we really appreciate it. Let us know where you guys are from. It's super fun. Wow, look at our elf is down there vacuuming, and I can see over to the left-hand side of the elf, you can kind of see there's 2 long-looking, light-colored greenish creatures down there that I him up a little bit. They might be having a nap after their brunch. But Delaney, are those eels?
Yes, those are Moray Eels. And you might be thinking, what is a Moray eel doing in a kelp forest? I'm used to seeing these animals hiding in rocks and caves and not really coming out and seeing their full body. So yes, Moray eels live in kind of rocky intertidal zones where there's lots of tiny places to hide. But you can see that we have rocks here at the bottom of our kelp forest. And at many times, these eels actually will come out and literally, I like to say slither, because they really slither like a snake, in front of the glass of our exhibit here, or the acrylic of the exhibit here. And they're really fascinating fish. Yes, they are fish. A lot of people don't think they're fish, that they might be something else.
Good
Is it
timing, eel.
coming up?
Kind of behind Scuba Elf, but I saw that eel. Whoa,
Oh,
look at
there it
the
is.
surface. It's saying, "What is this vacuum hose?"
Yeah. This hose kind of looks like me. It's
I
long and
know, right?
skinny. So you can see they're actually pretty good swimmers. They've got a long dorsal fin that kind of extends the whole length of their body, and they can get up to about 5 feet. And they're really cool fish because they actually have two sets of jaws, two sets
Whoa.
of teeth that they can use to eat their food. So
Super
they
cool.
are really cool. And of course, they came up to say hi when we're talking about them. So that's awesome.
Perfect timing. We have some eel follow-up questions that are coming in. We have two people ask the same question. We get a lot of questions coming in, guys. Thank you. So Enzo and we have Dasa both want to know, what do these eels eat? What do moray eels eat?
That's a great question. So you might think, if something has two sets of jaws, what kind of food is it eating? Well, absolutely, it can go after things that have shells or a hard skeleton because it's got those two sets of teeth to break it down. That's advantageous for an eel. And an eel, oh, perfect. It's swimming right in front of
There
the
we go.
exhibit to the left
Santa.
of Scuba Santa. Don't worry, it does not like to eat Scuba Santa. Again, they have smaller mouths, but really they're going to eat anything they can find in those small rocks and caves. So that includes a lot of different types of invertebrates, from different species of crabs to snails, sea stars, lobsters. And yes, they do enjoy the occasional fish as well. So it's a perfect view seeing it swim straight up, and you can see it. It kind of moves like a snake also. It really uses its full body to get that forward movement.
Very, very cool. One of my favorite facts about eels, our moray eels like we have here, is they actually have teeny tiny eyeballs compared to the rest of the size of their body. And they don't actually see very well, but they have 6 nostrils. We only have 2, but they have 6, so they have a great sense of smell. Oh man, Scuba Santa and Scuba Elf are waving. I'm not sure, this might mean that they're almost done talking to us today. And we had one quick question. Zachary wanted to know, what are those orange fish? We talked about them a little bit earlier. They're the Garibaldis. They're so, so cool. I just wanted to get that one before we wrap up. So we are going to hang out with Scuba Santa and Scuba Elf until they swim out. Looks like they're heading out. But from both of us, me and Delaney, we want to say thank you so much for tuning in with us. And with our team from Birch Aquarium at Scripps and Scuba Santa and Scuba Elf and our moray eel. We just wanted to do something nice for you guys for the holidays, even though we are temporarily closed. So thank you so much for tuning in. Delaney, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, just echoing what Caitlin said. Thank you so much for joining us. We are closed right now, but we're so fortunate to still be able to engage with people like you, and to educate you on a lovely Saturday morning, and to have Scuba Santa and Scuba Elf here. So just thank you so much for joining us. We so appreciate your support, and keep an eye out on our social media pages for upcoming interactions like this, and some more opportunities to teach you about the ocean. So just thank you for joining us, and happy holidays.
Yeah, happy holidays, everyone. And if you'd like to share this with more friends and family, it'll be available on Facebook and YouTube when we're done. So go ahead and spread some Scuba Santa joy and have a wonderful rest of your holiday season. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.